Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another episode of Fish Doctor. So this week, we have a pretty interesting modern list to look at. This one comes to us from the Magic Badger, and this is a modern combo deck looking to go infinite with Enter the Battlefield triggers, hopefully mill the opponent out with Altar of the Brood, but we'll talk more about that in a minute. Like usual, our plan for today is simple. We are going to talk about this deck, maybe do some doctoring to it, but we actually have kind of a secondary goal today, and our secondary goal is to talk about combo pieces and talk about how you determine the right combo pieces, the different options for combo pieces, and what you should be considering when you're looking for combo pieces for your deck. So we are going to doctor this deck in specific, but also take kind of a more meta perspective. So a super quick thing before we get into our deck doctoring, if you would like your own deck considered for a future episode of Fish Doctor, make sure to leave a link in the comments, or you can email me, saffronolive@mtggoldfish.com. So let's talk blue-white cat altar. So the idea of this deck is very straightforward. We are looking to use Felidar Guardian and Restoration Angel to generate infinite enter or leaves the battlefield triggers. The combo here is pretty straightforward. As long as you have at least one Felidar Guardian, you can have another Felidar Guardian or a Restoration Angel, and you basically just blink them back and forth. Felidar Guardian targets Resto to blink Resto, which blinks Felidar Guardian, and while this doesn't actually make any ground or kill our opponent on its own, if we throw another piece into the mix, we can potentially just kill our opponent. So the initial build of the deck is trying to mill the opponent out with this loop. The idea is you play Altar of the Brood, maybe on turn 1, which is a 1-mana artifact that makes it so whenever another permanent enters the battlefield, each opponent mills the top card of their library, and then if you do that loop, Felidar Guardian, Restoration Angel, back and forth, blink, 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 you're going to get infinite Altar of the Brood triggers, which hopefully just mills the opponent out of the game on the spot. They draw a card on their next turn, they lose. So that's the idea of the deck. The rest of the deck is just kind of value stuff, some walls, some Thraben Inspectors to draw cards, some removal, some counter spells for protection, but this is what we're really working with. So our big topic for today is the combo piece. We know kind of the foundation of the deck. Restoration Angel, Felidar Guardian, making infinite enters the battlefield, leaves the battlefield triggers. The question we have is Altar of the Brood the right way to take advantage of this combo and actually finish the game? Because really, anything that triggers off a creature entering or leaving the battlefield can potentially be used as a finisher of this combo. Like, the combo remains the same, but we could trade Altar of the Brood out for something else. So when you are building this kind of combo deck, you have the combo, you know how to generate infinite triggers, you gotta ask yourself, what's the right way to finish the game? So we're gonna go through a bunch of different options for finishing the game with the infinite blink combo, and kind of talk about the upside and downside, the pluses and minuses. So for Altar of the Brood in specific, the plus is it's cheap. It's only 1 mana. You can play it on turn 1. It's just sitting out there. The downside is twofold. First off, it doesn't do anything until you combo. Like, incidentally milling doesn't really generate any value at all. So when you play it on turn 1, it's just a dead card. And if you never manage to combo, you just kind of mulligan to 6 by playing this Altar of the Brood and even spent mana on it. The other thing is the incidental milling of Altar of the Brood can actually be a negative. A lot of decks in Modern are looking to use their graveyards with Vengevines, with Snapcaster Mages, Dredging, so many different graveyard decks. So playing Altar of the Brood on turn 1 and then just making your land drops, playing some Wall of Omens and so forth, you might actually be helping the opponent. So it's definitely super risky to just run out Altar of the Brood. So upside, cheap. Downside, it could actually be detrimental until you actually kill the opponent. So what are some other ways we can kill with the loop? And one of the simplest is Soul Warden, Soul Attendant. So these gain us a life whenever a creature comes into play, which means if we go infinite enter the battlefield triggers, we gain infinite life. So the upside of these cards is they are cheap. They're also doing something beneficial on their own, while a 1/1 for 1 that gains you some incidental life isn't exciting. It's not actively hurting you like an Altar of the Brood. The downside is similar to Altar of the Brood, where if the opponent has an Emrakul in their deck, you're not actually going to win with mill. There are ways of beating infinite life. There are cards that stop life gain, and not only that, but if your opponent manages manages to beat you with Mill or something, there's still ways to get around it, or an alternate win condition like Laboratory Maniac. So while Infinite Life beats a lot of decks, if your opponent can make infinite damage afterwards, or mill you out, you could still lose the game with Infinite Life. We also have Genesis Chamber, which gives us infinite tokens, so whenever a non-token creature comes into play, we get a 1/1 Mirror Artifact creature token. Unfortunately, it triggers for our opponent as well, so our opponent's making creatures. The downside of Genesis Chamber is our opponent can kill the tokens. Like, if we go infinite, and then we have to say, okay, your turn, opponent, and they just untap and cast a Damnation or a Wrath of God, we could make infinite tokens and still just lose. The upside is, infinite tokens is a good way to buy time. Even when we don't have the combo, we're just casting our random creatures, casting our Wall of Omens, making some tokens in creaturey matchups where opponents trying to kill us with Eldrazi and Tarmogoyfs and stuff. Just making a bunch of 1/1s can keep us alive while we're waiting to eventually draw into our combo pieces. We also have a couple of You're Dead options with Impact Tremors and Perforos Forge. So Impact Tremors is kinda similar to Alter the Brood in that on its own it's not a great card. Incidentally dealing a damage here or there, I guess it's fine. It is less bad than incidentally milling, because you're never going to benefit your opponent by dealing damage to them, while sometimes incidentally milling can actually help the opponent. In Perforos, it's good, it's just kind of expensive. If we're playing 4 Perforos, 4 Restos, 4 Felidar Guardians, our curve is going to be really clunky. The other downside of both of these cards is they are in red, so we would have to reach into an entirely different color. While modern mana bases can easily support it, it is a consideration that we're going to take more damage off of our lands, have a higher budget for our lands to be able to support a 3-color build. The upside, though, is they just kill the opponent outright. And while there are things that can kinda save our opponent, I guess, it is very difficult for our opponent to survive these, especially since it deals damage to each opponent and not a target opponent. So things like Leyline of Sanctity don't actually stop our opponent from dying to Impact Tremors, dying to Perforos. So these are probably the most guaranteed way to kill our opponent with the combo, but it comes with the cost of Impact Tremors not being that great, Perforos being clunky on the curve, and having to go into another color. We also have some ways to just make an infinitely big creature, like 9th Bridge Patrol. If it's on the battlefield when we have infinite leaves the battlefield triggers, just becomes infinitely big. Mantle of Leadership, kinda janky, but it's an enchantment that essentially makes a creature infinitely big until end of turn. So we could go on the just one-shot you plan, where we try to make one really huge creature, attack with it. The downside of that plan is, number one, creature removal can stop it. If we're trying to make an infinitely big 9th Bridge Patrol, our opponent could be like, alright, sure, put 1,000,000 counters on it, make it 1,000,001, over 1,000,001, whatever, and then they just fatal push, and that all kind of goes to nothing. The other issue is, it can be blocked. So if we want to make sure that 9th Bridge Patrol or Mantle of Leadership was going to win the game, we'd have to add in other pieces, a way to make the creature unblockable, a fling, a thud, something like that. So it would need a little bit of help, or else we could make this huge 9th Bridge Patrol, and if our opponent has a Lingering Souls token, they'd be able to stop our ability from killing them. The other option is to add in even more cards to the combo. If you have Panharmonicon, then when you're doing the infinite blink trigger with Felidar Guardians, not only do you get to blink the other creature trying to blink, like the second Felidar Guardian, the Restoration Angel, you can also blink something else in between because you get double triggers from Panharmonicon, which means if you have a Sunscorched Desert, you're able to just kill the opponent by blinking the land over and over. One blink trigger on the land, one on the other Felidar Guardian, back and forth, back and forth. You draw your entire deck with Wall of Omens, etc., etc., etc. The downside of this plan is you're adding in even more pieces for the deck to win. While Panharmonicon is fine in a deck with Thraben Inspectors, Wall of Omens already, you're just getting incidental value. To actually go infinite, you are going to need Panharmonicon plus his infinite combo plus Sunscorched Desert, so you're adding more pieces when the initial combo was just 2 of Felidar Guardian / Restoration Angel plus Altar of the Brood to win the game. So as you can see, there are a ton of different possibilities for actually making the Cat Altar deck work, and when you're trying to determine which one is best, it really comes down to two things primarily. Which card does the most in your deck when you're not comboing off? That is number one. Assume that you never get the combo. Which of the combo pieces would you rather have in your deck? Which does at least a little something when you're not living the dream, hitting the magical Christmas land combo? So that's consideration number one. The other consideration is how much effort you want to put into finding the combo. Like, one of the problems with the blue-white cat altar build that we started with is you only have 4 Altar of the Broods, and while the deck does have ways to protect it, Pact of Negations, Mana Leak, Spell Pierces, some Serum Visions to find it, you're definitely going to have games where you just don't find your combo pieces. So one of the sweet things about a value-based combo like the Infinite Blink combo, because the deck itself, I mean, it is just a value deck. You can blink your Thraben Inspectors, Wall of Omens, Reflector Mages, is you can technically play multiple combos in the deck. So how would we go about tuning this deck to try to make the Infinite Blink combo as good as possible? So I think it starts off with getting rid of utility spells. While the idea of using Pact of Negation, Spell Pierce, Mana Leak to protect the combo is nice, one of the problems is you're going to have to combo off a little bit later with Spell Pierce or Mana Leak to be able to leave them up anyway. So instead of trying to spend slots on protection for our combo, what if we just spend our slots on more ways to combo off, essentially? Instead of trying to protect a few combo pieces, just play a critical mass of combo pieces, so even if our opponent could deal with one, it probably isn't going to be the end of the world, because we'll just draw another one because we have more combo pieces. Otherwise, Serum Vision, Path to Exile, you do need some amount of utility spells in the deck. Path to Exile, do not leave home without it. You gotta have some form of removal. Serum Visions, on the other hand, we already have the ability to blink Wall of Omens, to blink things like Thraben Inspector, so it might not be necessary. So if I was going to build around the Infinite Blink combo, I think this is where I would start off, with a deck I call it Cat Sisters. So this is a big shift from where the initial deck was, but it's built around the same synergy. Felidar Guardian, Restoration Angel, being able to blink each other infinite times. The idea of this upgrade, though, is to make sure that the deck can function without the combo. Like, we could still do things, maybe even win games without the combo, and to make sure we have more ways of comboing off, and preferably ways that are valuable to our deck anyway. So one thing you'll notice is the deck is mono white now. I actually initially tried to build it white-blue. That was my plan. But then as I was adding the cards I wanted to the deck, I realized the only blue card I kind of wanted in the main deck was Reflector Mage, and I didn't think it was worth keeping blue in the deck just for Reflector Mage, especially since white offers so many good sideboard cards already that you don't really need the negates and so forth to be unfair decks, because you got Stony Silence, Stamping Spheres, Rest in Pieces, just so many good options for the sideboard. So this deck, instead of just needing exactly Felidar Guardian, exactly a second Felidar Guardian or Restoration Angel, and exactly Altar of the Brood, can actually combo off in a whole bunch of different ways, and the combo pieces are doing something, at least a little something, when we don't have the combo. So we are built around the same foundation. Resto, Felidar Guardian, 4 copies of each, trying to go infinite with each other. But when it comes to winning the game, we can gain infinite life with Soul Warden or Soul Attendant. And the nice thing about this is, these are actually cards we don't mind playing on turn 1. As we talked about before, Altar of the Brood can be detrimental, and in the best case, it's doing nothing on turn 1. Soul Warden and Soul Attendant, they're giving us a little bit of life. If we play against Burn or an aggro deck, that little bit of life might buy us enough time to find our other combo pieces and win the game, and life is never going to be detrimental to us. We also can slot in Genesis Chamber, which allows us to make infinite tokens, and also works really well with our Soul Warden and Soul Attendants. Just as we're naturally casting Wall of Omens and not comboing off, we're doubling up our creatures, which is doubling up our gain life triggers, which is making it really hard for our opponent to kill us. We can also just make infinitely big creatures. The nice thing about the infinitely big creatures in this build is, along with a couple of 9th Bridge Patrols, which are primarily only good with the combo, although the flickering is fine. We can just grow it into like a 4/4 or a 5/5 as we flicker Wall of Omens and so forth. But we can also just go to town with the Johnny's Pridemate, and with 6 copies of Soul Warden / Soul Attendant, we're going to grow a Johnny's Pridemate into a big threat anyway. Like, it's a good card in this deck anyway. way, it doubles up if we have Genesis Chamber to make more creatures and gain more life. So it's another card that is good when we're not going infinite, but also managed to be a payoff when we go infinite. And then probably the most controversial inclusion in the deck, and I might be biased because I love Panharmonicon, but we do have 2 copies of Panharmonicon. So the thinking here is Panharmonicon, it doubles up Thraben Inspector, it doubles up Wall of Omens, it doubles up our life-gaining triggers, it doubles up our triggers from Genesis Chamber. So basically, we are just doubling up anything anyway, and while Panharmonicon will be at its best, when we go infinite, flicker Sunscorched Desert, kill our opponent with damage, uncounterable damage, it will also be fine even if we don't go infinite. Just drawing us extra cards, flooding the board with tokens, allowing us to win with a fair game of Magic. While it is a little bit expensive and a little bit clunky because it's another 4-drop, it gives us yet another card that allows us to win when we do draw our combo, but is still fine when we don't draw our combo. The other thing I wanted to mention is, I know that the upgraded build that we were just going through, I think it's very good, and that's the build I would want to play. The problem is, it doesn't include Altar of the Brood, so if the idea was, you gotta have Altar of Brood to make it work, I would still play essentially the build we were just talking about, but cut a few of the extra cards, like trim back on a Panharmonicon, trim back on a Genesis Chamber, some of those secondary value combo pieces, and play Altar of the Brood instead. That way you still have the Altar of the Brood, if that's the big selling point of the deck, but you also still have these other pieces that allow you to combo off in other ways and are good in other matchups. So while I would personally cut the Altar of the Broods, you can still make it work without it. So anyway, I think that brings us to the end of our Fish Doctor for the week. And I know the deck underwent a really huge transformation. We cut a color, we cut combo pieces, we added a ton of stuff, but I feel like we're still built around the same combo, and I felt like this deck gave us a really good opportunity to talk about an interesting topic that we don't get to talk about that much, which is, how do you choose your finishers and how do you choose your combo pieces? Because we're playing, especially in Modern, with so many cards that you have a lot of similar but slightly different effects, and I think it's important to learn to think through all of your options. Don't just go with the first one, don't just go with the cheapest one, but think through what each one does. Try to pick the one that is best when you're not comboing, because all the combo pieces we talked about, when we go infinite, they will win us the game, or essentially win us the game. So the challenge is finding the one that is best when you're not comboing. Think of the worst case scenario, which one do you want, instead of the best case scenario, because in the best case scenario, all those cards are going to get the job. Anyway, hopefully this was interesting. Hopefully these lessons were relevant. Thank you again to the Magic Badger for sending in the deck. If you'd like your own deck considered for a future Fish Doctor, leave that link in the comments. Email me at saffronolive@mtggoldfish.com. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.